Recording in progress. Okay. So search queries with Boolean operators. That's where we are starting. Quotation marks. I think we did a similar example earlier in the previous class. I just want you to know that the keywords are different from the search term. The search term could be number of keywords enclosed together within the quotation marks. So this we have done already. No big deal, nothing very specific about it. Now, the behavior of how the quotation marks impact your search results and how the search engine interprets it. We touched upon it earlier, but I'm going to talk a little bit deeper on these conceptual understandings of what happens if the quotation marks are not used. So let's suppose we have three words. Never mind the underline, it's just to identify the word. So we've got three words inserted in a search box. This, by the way, these brackets, I'm sure you could have guessed that these are just simulating a search box. Internet research specialist, when we type these in the search, we are dealing with three keywords. And what happens is that by default, just remember that the search first attempts to find all three words in the same sequence as you place them. But these are not enforced. Okay, like enforcement in the sense that they should maintain their sequence, or where all the three words should be present in your search results. Those are not enforced, but are considered a choice for the search to find easily if it can find those documents with matching all three. So this is the default action. Yeah. And we are talking about number one query, which is without quotation marks. Other things that would happen is that the search might just reshuffle the terms, or the sequence of these terms can be moved, or can be, actually the sequence will be broken as in two, as you could see. So that would be the second action. Okay. Third action would be it will start doing pairing, which means that if it finds these two words like internet research, for instance, to have a more significance or popularity and is easy to get, or there's more frequency of these two to be together as search terms, it would separate the word specialist and combine internet research as one search phrase. So that could be another action. Now here we are randomizing or assuming or simulating what the search might do. It is without predicting, or I wouldn't have a way of knowing exactly the behavior of it, because now this query is not as controlled, not using the quotation marks. Then it would start pairing with, in different ways, like internet research, for instance, could, here we are looking at the word researcher instead of research. So it might just start to replace, or basically just use its make it into um, you know either default to the root word, or it's going to start to give its variations. So we've got researcher, internet research specialist, um, 4 and 5 substitute terms. So search is replaced by research. This is another behavior. Okay. Then we've got 6, 7, and 8, which is pairing or shuffling or combining terms in different combinations, or different keywords may be placed in different combinations: internet research, internet specialist, research specialist, and so on. So that's when we are talking about the query one. And now we will look at internet research specialist inside of the quotation marks, on how the quotation marks are going to control your search with keeping the integrity of all these words intact in terms of their placement or their sequence. So we've got two scenarios to differentiate or to give you an idea of what could be the variations of using quotation marks, and how would the search return different results, why they would return different results. Now, I think I explained before that quotation marks are not only used to put the term or make bunch of keywords to appear as a single search phrase or a single search term. The second behavior is to enforce or to make sure that those are found as a mandatory return. So anything that is within quotes, and if you plug it into your search box, they will bring results that has all of these written as you have placed them in the quotation, or there'd be a mirror image of whatever is enclosed inside of quotation mark. In the second instance, we have three words that we can also enforce, basically ensuring that each of these are found individually, or they can be scattered word all over the content page. They may not be in the sequence, but they certainly would have to be found on that document. That's why each of these words can also be placed inside of the quotation marks. So if you compare A with B, the consequence of it or the result of it would appear. It is kind of animated. So I'm going to click and see what it's going to do. So usually a surprise for me, sometimes they do animate things. So seems that they have done that in this slide. Internet research specialist on a page which is coming from, let's say, a domain checkme.com. So we're talking about two domains as an example. These are not real domains, just for illustration purposes. So in checkme.com, if we got a page that responded to the query A, you will see that it keeps the sequence of these words intact. So the page had all three written as you have placed them in the quotation marks. This is example A. Now, what will happen in example B in seeme.com, another page that comes up when you type it as you did in B, then just see the arrows. They are connecting with words that are scattered, or they may be present, but may not necessarily be in the same sequence. So they can be combined words, but again, the idea here is that it becomes a mandatory return or has to be enforced as part of the content page. So when you compare A with B, you will see that let me ask, what would be the volume of results in terms of quantity of return results if you compare A with B? Do you think A will bring more pages back or B will be giving you more results? Anyone can answer if you'd like to.
I would think you'd get more results with B because they're searching each one separately, but you would get very specific results for like more job listings and things when you use the phrase with the quotation marks. That's my guess.
Well, I think that's well understood, and that's exactly how I would put it. So when you have B situations, you will definitely get more results because more variations, even though they're enforced returns, but at the same time, more likelihood of finding pages that have these individual keywords present versus the A situation. So that's good. Then we are going to go to the next one. And this is just explaining the number of results. Obviously, this quantity or this number would change if you do it today. But that's just giving you an idea of what's going to be coming. When you put things in quotation marks, it reduces or fine tunes it um, to a lot less results. You could see 268,000 versus 209 million. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Here is another way of looking at how these three words not inside of the quote would behave. At times we deliberately have to put certain words outside of the quotation marks to give it a flexibility by design, just to get slightly more results, to get an idea of what's coming back, or allow for the search engine to substitute certain words or rephrase your statement of search terms. So um, when we do that, we have to be, you know, I guess there is this side of creativity or understanding or testing out, or how you're going to look for something by emphasizing on few words which you necessarily have to be able to put there as the main reference or the primary keywords. And so you're going to put it within quotations. Others you want to play with or let the search engine, return something with more flexibility. So, design it such. If it is a long list of keywords or it's a long search phrase, perhaps few keywords you want to separate as primary and put them in quotes, and others you want to leave them out. This is just giving you an idea of what would be the other scenario. First of all these three keywords do another thing. When you get your return results in snippets, you can visualize it as three components or three elements. There is a title part, there's description part, there is URL part. So when we are not putting anything within quotations, or we are not actually sort of restricting it to be found within a certain area of a content page, or not being specific about which HTML tags you want queried specifically, then what happens is that it would start to find these in any part of the content page, meaning title, description, or they'll appear in all three different elements. So all three keywords in this case would be appearing in the title, URL, and description, because they are not restricted anymore. Like, we are not using in text, in URL, or in title. It finds most popular. Second behavior is that, at times I leave certain keywords open outside of the quotation and wait for the search results to tell me, or search results give me a story of what keywords are better used uh, paired together, being more popular or more frequently searched, or gives me an idea of using something that could be a synonym or a replacement, or combinations that would be easy for me to get to those topics, or those pages. So I would certainly would wait for what comes back to me in combination when I leave them open. So when I did this search, I would find that the most popular keywords that appear more frequently or with high frequency in the top ranking pages or snippets are these two words, like internet research, okay, as being more popular together, versus internet specialist versus research specialist. So there is a combination that sort of brings or gives me an idea when I'm looking at the ranked pages to see what has got more frequency of appearing in those snippets. Okay, so that's all this slide is telling you. Stop words we did already. Few more things. Remember when we did simulation of indexing, of when the indexing strips the content page into words, or randomize everything without I guess, not randomized, but without giving any attention to the headings, captions, paras. It just strips the entire text out of that content page, lays it out on its algorithmic side, and starts to work on it. And this is where the situation appears for the search to distinguish between those words that are stop words in red colors. And by the way, the term stop words, even though it is not justified for using it for certain notations and symbols, we'd still like to call them stop words for some reason. But I will tell you that there are stop words like notations as in end, question mark, anything, even aesthetics. So the aesthetic that is used in this case is considered as a symbol or a stop word, which is not recognized at the time when it is doing its indexing. Because, here it is more on the textual side, it is not a command. And everything that is stripped out uh, and laid in front of you is just all textual, nothing to do with the query. So that's one thing that you have to understand. Some students ask me to give them a list of stop words. Now it could be a very huge list, and I don't have one. What I have is, collection or at least enough number of keywords. I'm sorry, stop words that generally are of the same nature as you could see. Um, like the word once you have the you can sort of get an idea, you can use your best imagination to know which could be the stop words, when you create a search query. But the words like just using the word password, I would call it a power word or a word that would explain or give an indication to the search what you're looking for specifically. Because password, I guess it's a noun. It's something that search engine understands, account it understands. But when you connect account and password together with for your, it's not going to entertain it or not going to look for these two, for and your. On the other hand, if I put password for your account inside of the quotation marks as four words, as if it is one single search phrase, it certainly would have to look for the exact match, which includes the stop words inside of the quotation marks to make it into a search phrase. So without using quotation marks, we cannot expect search engine to include in the search these two words in between, okay, like for and yours. Should be easy to understand. Eh? Here is another example. It just popping up. It's comes as a surprise. Anytime I click on my cursor, something pops up because they've animated it. So there could be and I'm using it for the first time. That could be a little bit of surprise for both of us. Here in this example, it is showing. Okay, let me go back. See, this I wouldn't know. If I click something, would it take me to the next one? Because let me go back, break out of this one, coming back to the same slide. Okay, so this one has how to become as a stop word. Question mark is a stop word. So it's just showing you whatever is in red color. If it is included or put inside of the quotes, it is going to be matched exactly as it's written. And it would include matching of a question mark and also include how to become all four stop words to be included. Okay. And to maintain the sequence as you've laid it in this question. I guess this is just showing you some of the ways in which you have to be mindful about using stop words, because when we're typing something quickly, we don't pay a lot of attention to it. Like if it is the word really, for instance, it is ideally a stop word. Um, so if that has to be placed inside as a query with all three words together, um, the word really would not be counted. Okay. Simple may not be counted. Syndication may be counted. So, anytime that you don't use a quotation marks and you are including stop words without being careful about, knowing or unknowingly you put stop words, it's going to be ignored. When you're writing something that is not that's got a space or unnecessary is space in between, it will be counted as two words which won't make any sense because they're not part of the lexical semantics that would match any of the words that has re in it or ply in it. So re and ply, so the space factor in between, or anything that is separating a single word and breaking it into two on account of leaving a gap, it's going to be a stop word or considered a stop word. Same way, notation such as question mark in what is internet research. So, using the symbol of question mark may not actually work for you. So you might have to put all this or the entire statement within quotation mark. Okay. Now, in this example, it is showing you different variations of how the quotation marks are used to sort of, make sure that the search term is actually executable, and ways in which the quotation marks can be manipulated or maneuvered for search results. I'm going to take example one first, and I think I'll have to move to the next slide just to show you what it is. Now, in this example, what is most important for us to understand is that we've got, uh, uh, I guess it's an organic chemistry formula, 3,6 dash dichloro. Obviously, it's a long one. But then at the end, you would see that we have used this arrow in between the word acid and the rest of what the formula is. So the gap or anything that remains as a space between acid and everything else on the left, this is denoting that these are two search keywords placed together. So the gap, or anytime you're going to leave a space in between anything, even between characters or between words, that tells the search that it is a differentiator between separating one keyword from another. So gap is something that you have to, even if you put the term within quotation, make sure that this gap is always there so that the last character in carboxylics, the C is not connected with A. Otherwise, it would be one single search term. And even if you put it within quotation marks. Okay. Then in the next situation, you could see that if we separate 3, comma, and leave a space between number 6 and the comma, even though the comma is a stop mark or a stop word, what is going to happen? The search is going to treat 3 as just a number or just one single digit, which is not recognizing the comma here, just because it is a stop word. And then because there is a gap between 6 and 3, so the next term after the number 3 would start with 6 dash dichloro. And what this would do is it's going to distort, or it's not going to bring you back exact results as you would otherwise get or would consider this to be a separate formula, which is starting with C and not starting with 3. So again, it's the gap that we have to be mindful about. Another situation that I would like to explain even better, if I can put it in the notepad, which is what I usually use instead of whiteboard. So I'm going to bring that up and basically try to copy this and place it. Let's suppose this is the term. Copy this and place it in the notepad. Mm. Okay, let me copy it from here. Okay, so there we go. And the next thing I'll do is I'll zoom in so that it's more visible. These are class notes also, because few things that I'm going to put on the notepad, I'll also place it in your Dropbox. So let's call it, and let's just make it query 1 as an example. Now, if I make another example of what we actually have as a starting point and call it a variant of 1. Remove this temporarily. Now, what happens if I leave a gap? Um, like this, like after 6, I start with dash, dichloro, dash 2, whatever else is here up till carboxylics. If I do it like this, what happens is that the search engine is going to assume that this is a minus sign and it's not a dash, and therefore, and because minus sign replaces something called NOT in the Boolean notations that we like to replace with or use a notation for. The NOT or a minus sign is supposed to eliminate from your search results the term that is right next to it. So minus starting with dichloro 2 up till the carboxylics or where it ends before the gap between acid and the character C. This entire set will be eliminated, would not be part of your search result. So just because you left a gap over here, that is one thing. Second thing I want you to note is that for the term to become as a one single search term, there should be no gaps in between. Okay. And if I leave a gap over here, now what I've done is I've created 3 search terms, 3, and this one as the second term, this carboxylic as the third, and this would be the fourth. So now I have actually separated it. And even if I put it within quotation marks, it would still be separate keywords. So they will actually become all keywords. And as I mentioned before, with the search attempting to find all words together or in the same sequence, even outside of the quotation, that is just a half-hearted effort by search engine. It seldom works. Okay. But the assumption behind that or behind the first default action which is to find everything from left to right as a search term, uh, is to assume the gaps to be plus signs. Okay. So it is an assumed plus sign. Search engine like Google does not allow you to use plus signs anymore. It used to be way back, maybe 4 years ago. Right now, the plus sign is no longer required, or in fact, it is going to give you incorrect results. But here, when I'm writing the plus signs in front of you, in between the gap or covering the gap with a plus sign, it is something that you have to assume, or the Google is going to assume that there is inherent or assumed connection between words to be available one next to another as they're laid out in this example. But this plus sign is not enforced. It is like, you're touching something, not grabbing it. It is not going to attempt to execute it as if it is a strong, or it is a kind of enforced plus. It is an assumed plus, but not an enforced plus. So that is the reason why anything that is, say, let's just take B, for example. I'm just going to not confuse you anymore with the quotation. So let's just take another example, B. And if I put this outside of the quotations, let's say, and I leave a gap, it is still considered a plus sign. But when you put something within the quotation marks, it is doubly plussed. Okay. Now, when I say doubly plus, this is the best way I can express it, meaning that now it is enforced as if the second plus sign is reinforcing the first plus sign. So this is what's going to be happening when we put it within quotes. When we leave it outside of the quote, just think of it as a one plus sign, which is like a, half-hearted and or not as strongly imposed plus. Okay. So this is the best way that I can distinguish between A and B. Is this making sense, or anything that you want a clarity on with this concept? If not, then we will continue. Um, Now, the next thing we'll be doing is more complicated, and it's a sequence or kind of a rhythm I don't want to break. So I'd rather take a 10 minutes break right now and then go to the next segment after. So let's just make some coffee or take a break for 10-15 minutes, and I'll see you in a little bit. So I'm shutting my video and muting my mic temporarily, but you all can talk to each other. That channel is always open. And I'm not listening to what you're saying because I'll be outside of the room, just for your information. Anyway, so shutting the mic and the video. See you in a Okay, I'm back and we can continue. I was just wondering if someone can let me know if the video is showing on your side and the voice is clear, and I'll continue right away. All good?
All good.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let me just position this back where it was and get out of this one. Okay. Yeah, so let's look at a few examples with the quotation marks. We have listed 5 examples. So we have done the first one. We got the rules cleared up. Now, there is another example, example 2, and it's going to show you how the search would understand certain ways in which you're going to put the numbers together. Um, for instance, there is this soap opera called Bold and Beautiful. Just as an example, I don't know exactly if it is correct or not. Anyway, this is something that you want to put within quotation marks. So to make sure that the sequence is maintained. But then next to it, you can see that we have written 1-6 without any gaps in between 1 dash and the 6. All three are together. So basically, it is another search term. We have 2 search terms effectively. So 1-6 would mean that it is the season 1 and episode 6. That's how the search is going to interpret it with relationship to whatever you have put next to it, because the search knows already through MLI or the machine learning that this is a play, an opera with the name that it can identify with. And if you put 1-6, it would automatically assume that you're looking for season 1, episode 6. All right. That's the logic that keeps getting built up and it keeps evolving and gets more refined. So, to give more sense to whatever is going to be on either side of, let's say, 1-6, in this case, it is just on its left where, it is going to start to create relationship effectively with the 1-6 as it is understood to have a season 1 and episode 6. Well, that's what it means, or one of 6, or the sixth part of one. Okay. You can even write it like in the second one, which says 1 oblique or 1 divided by 6 would also mean the same in relationship to bold and beautiful. So it has the ability to create that relationship and interpret whatever is next to it, even if it's numbers or any other context which sort of has a recorded relationship or established relationship with these numbers. And here it is again the season 1 and episode 6. You can even write it in another way where you can put 1-6 or 1/6 within quotation marks to enforce it. But at times when things don't show up as you want, and you feel that 1-6 is not being recognized, or for some reason you want to make it strict, um, kind of um, a symbolic or something that you need to, to, to give a meaning, um, you can put it within quotation marks. But if the results are not coming correctly, then you really don't want to actually enforce it. You just want to leave it open. So I would rather prefer query 1 and 2 against the query, the third one, which is putting 1-6 within quotation marks. And another thing, that we have to be careful about is that when we put something within quotation marks as a sequence of words along with 1/6, inserting it inside of the quotation marks, the search is going to look for exact match of how it is set or how it is being phrased or put together. So if bold and beautiful, it or the last word beautiful is not continuing with the 1/6 as something which makes it into a search phrase, it's going to reject the query or it may not fit in correctly. So perhaps not a good idea to put 1/6 inside of the quotation because you don't know if the sequence is going to be the same or it's going to be the exact match where 1/6 is continuing. So that's what you've learned in example 2. In example 3, if we have three search terms, for instance, market research report, market research industry report, I would elaborate a little bit more in example 3 to sort of play with this query a little bit to give you a few variations of how we can refine this query. Example 3 is meant to give you an idea how you can refine it and how you can move your quotation marks. So I would attempt it in the notepad. If I have to refine this query, what would be my approach? I can see the word report is being repeated in these, I guess, at least two of these search terms. So I would rather I'm just cleaning it up a little bit to make it more effective. Here, market research is coming again as two words, and I have removed report, the word report, and I've placed it outside, supposing or leaving the report outside as one other word that would somehow make it into or may fit into these three terms. Okay. Next thing is market research. That's a repetition also. So let's suppose, so if I wrote it like this, market research industry demand, or let's say even putting this within quotation marks, would this be a better option or B would be a better option, which is where I'm going to make few more changes. See, if I remove the quotation marks here, I'm opening it up a little bit for the search to look for the word industry or demand, but make sure that the word report remains intact. Where market research report could be something, or report could be the word found on the same page. But, at the same time, market research is also going to be part of the content. Uh, However, I have now reduced it a little bit. There's one more thing I'm going to do to make it better, where I would give an option for the word market research to have equal satisfaction or satisfactory results with using the word industry or using the word demand by putting the or sign or something which asks the search to find either industry or demand. which would work just the same or could be fine for you. But the word report you want to keep intact. So between two, A and B, which one would you think would be more effective, or where we have actually sort of are doing the same thing, where we are in fact looking for the results based on what we wrote in two, but because it is a long one and it could be, it could be constructed better. Because see, the more words or the more terms that you're going to put in, or the longer you're going to make your search query, it becomes even more, or it becomes less precise, and more variations comes in and becomes more confusing. So lesser number of words but effectively placed with carefully using your quotation marks is the best way to do it. And you can keep refining the query, and everything will depend on what gets returned back to you. So that is where you will, start to or keep refining it. So between two, A and B, which one would you have preferred, or would you think that you would still get the same results with between two and A and B version of it? Anyone?
Randy here. Well, I think that I like B. Um, I think because I like the or operator here. And with A, it just seems hard for me to describe it. I guess the word that comes to me would be just a little bit more messy than B. And B, at least with, I don't know about the number of return queries, but with B, it might be a little easier to identify reports
I
or other
agree.
retrieval to focus on industry or demand. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. True. Because you see, what might happen in A, and what I'm afraid of is that what if market research does not have on that page the word industry and the word demand and the word, or like imposing more words or expecting more words to remain or to be available with relationship to the market research, make it really a tight query, and occasionally you may not find exactly something that you're looking for. Plus, what you could miss a lot of opportunities to find the right result or the right search reports, um, because it's much more tighter. And expectation is that you're forcing it to find all three words together. So if even B doesn't work as well, would there be a chance that we can create another version of it? Something else came to my mind, and maybe I can improvise slightly. So if, where, okay, there, if I lose or get rid of the quotation uh, enclosed word report, would this make it even better? Because see what happens sometimes in B, if you're not getting the right results, the next step would be to open it and give it a breather, give it more flexibility. So what I have done is that I've removed the quotation, because a lot of times it could be a research, but the word report is not used. Or it could be, instead of report, it could be um, some other word like what is it, like academic paper of some sort. So it may not be using the word report. So I'm going to leave it outside of the quotation marks to even make it, more flexible. So I would probably if B doesn't work well, I'll use C, right? Okay. Back to our examples. Example 4. Example 4 is going to tell you that getting less number of results does not mean that you're getting quality results or there are more precision results. So quantity is not the criteria exactly. Now, if we look at example 4, we've got 5 different ways of writing the same query, except that we are moving our quotation marks, right? In the first one, it says Steve Jobs' important life lesson. So, important life lesson was a title given to a speech that Steve Jobs gave in Stanford. So there was, no title to it, but somehow it got a title, and it's used extensively as important life lesson. So important life lesson is one segment of this query, which makes these 3 words as separate words or um, separate set of keywords from the word Steve Jobs, which is the name of you know which is a name basically. So these are like 2 different segments of the same query, and here we are mixing it up, sort of leaving it outside of the quotation marks. On the other hand, if we do Steve Jobs, but because Steve Jobs is too, it's much too much famous as the name of the famous person, uh, invariably it is going to think of the word Jobs as the last name or first name is attached as Steve. um, that's the action that search will do. But supposing it was not Steve Jobs or somebody else with the word Jobs in it, it might just treat the word Jobs separate from the first word Steve. So the idea would be really to put Steve and Jobs together within quotation marks so that it is definitely and most certainly considered together as one search term with the name, and then to put important life lesson as a second segment and put all these 3 words or the last 3 words together inside of the quotation marks. And this is the reason why we are getting so many results. It's not putting or not confining and restricting it with the quotes. We got about 3,860,000 results. If I have to make it slightly better, what I would do is to begin with is put important life lessons within quotation marks because it is separate. It's not a sequential thing. So important life lessons inside of the quotes made it more refined, and we got 170,000 results. Okay. In the third one, we put Steve Jobs' important life lessons inside of the quotes, and we got only 5 results. Basically, with what the theory is and with how people perceive it, coming as least number of results is considered precision results or more refined results. But that's not the case because we only got 5 results and they were not as satisfactory. One of the reasons is that it's hard to find the content or anything that has a sequentially arranged words as they're laid inside of the quotes, with the Steve Jobs continuing with the statement of important life lessons. So because they're not sequentially available as you've written it, it will get you few results, but may not be as good of a choice. In the fourth one, we've separated Steve Jobs, then we had given it a better context or put in a word speech to ensure that the search treats this as something to do with the speech of speech with the title important life lessons. Important life lessons being closed within quotation marks. So it is sometimes best that you add an additional context which gives more meaning to whatever is on the either side of it. So speech could be the word, and therefore we saw that we got 51,700 results. Apparently, from what the intent was, it appeared that we found better quality of results, more of references to important life lessons by Steve Jobs, that turned out to be the best results. In the last one, we got we put Steve Jobs' speech, and we got important life lessons placed within the quotations marks. We got 187,000 results. So depends on your placement of quotation marks or how you have forced something to be found together or alongside any other keywords or search terms, will give you the quality results or the type of results that you are looking for. So example 4 is talking about moving the quotation marks and emphasizing certain statements, separating them from each other and adding context. So number 4 was more accurate and therefore more satisfactory. In the fifth example, A, B, C, D, got 4. What do you do when you have to put a notation like a question mark to pose a question or make something appear as a question in the content pages? Um, there is a symbol that we use, or there could be words like what, where, when, how, and anything that turns the search phrase into a question. With full understanding that the question mark is a stop word, and therefore if it is used outside of the quotes, it may not be recognized. So to make our best attempt to turn something into a question, these are few things that we can do. So if we have internet research and we want to make sure that these two words somehow are found on a page with the question mark, which could be next to it or could be words in between, we don't know exactly, but this is like, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But that's the best one of the things that you can do, that you want the question mark found and you want internet research or whatever combination of these words to somehow be there, with the question mark symbol. In B, you could see that we have put internet research within quotation marks and put the question mark also within quotes to impose it, force it for the search to recognize. So this is another way of writing it. Whereas I think B is a lot better than A. In C, we have used the stop word what, which is outside of the quotation marks, and then these two words together with the question mark that is following or is coming at the end of the word research. Now, this could be advantageous when you put everything inside of the quotes with the question mark there, because now it's going to search for anything or any statement or a question that ends with a question mark. But the drawback is that it is have to be an exact match, or the sequence in which it is written would end with a question mark, which may not be the exact question on that content page. So you'll get probably less results, and the likelihood of finding something that is followed the word research with a question or ends with a question mark, we don't know. Uh, on the other hand, we have placed the word what outside of the quotes, and therefore this could be an ambiguity, and perhaps the search is not going to entertain it. So the word what may not be enforced or may not be useful, um, or it would be dropped totally. When we are looking at D, we have put these three wordings alongside internet research and a question mark. So D could enforce all these three words, but may not execute as you would imagine, only because you are now asking search to make all these three words available on that content page along with this search term, internet research and question mark. So I would rather make it more flexible. I would rather be putting the or in between three of these words to make it better. I would put the fifth query to make it more executable. So I would rather do it this way. And because you're using OR as a choice, perhaps you don't need to place them within quotation marks. Now, whenever, and remember, we are discussing the rules right now. That's something that you have to keep in your memory and something that I may not be repeating. So, if I don't put all three of them within quotation marks, it's still okay. Why? Because the rule says that whenever you put an operator or a boolean in between any of the keywords or any search phrases, this implies or assumes that the whatever you're going to put on the left of it and on the right of it or either side of it would have to be counted without being enforced as if it is supposed to make a choice between all three words. So it is not something that you have to put within quotation marks. Okay. But in case somehow the query falters or somehow it is not bringing you as accurate results, sometimes you can put some of these within quotes or put all of these within quotes if you'd like. That's like you're just pushing the search to do it in a more aggressive kind of a way to ensure that it's badly needed or it's really needed and it has to account for all three words for search. But as a rule or as something which the operator OR dictates, it is a mandatory for the search to find or make a match or find either or as a choice if any of these terms are placed on the left and the right side of it. So for the OR to operate, first of all, it has to have a condition of two choices to be falling on both sides of it. And the second thing is that it is enforced choice and therefore it has to match it. So therefore, E, in my opinion, would work sufficiently well and would be better used instead of D. A would be more perfect. So this would be best to use. If I make any notes, make any changes in the slides, I make sure that I replace this or put this in your Dropbox. So the next thing, once we get finished with it, first thing I would do is just ask someone to place it in the Dropbox for you. You're not going to miss anything. Okay. So far, so good. Everything's clear and you feel comfortable with what appears to be, a lot of information on using quotation marks. Um, from the clarity perspective, is everybody okay with it? Because then we can move on to the next topic. All good, eh? Now I want to talk about, by the way, we are preparing some videos and I'm supposed to be finishing one more that I'd like to give you on Friday. There'll be three videos that's going to prep you or prepare you for advanced search operators, particularly in text, in URL, and in title. Um, so those videos, or the last one, which I'm about to finish, all three of them will be given to you on Friday. And if you can just review them, it'll help you and prepare you, perhaps make you ask more questions. So even before we start advanced operators, we're going to do that. But at the same time, like I said, we're going to do a lot of examples of Booleans on Friday. And that would be a good day for you to do hands-on practice and perhaps get more questions to share with each other, and for me to also know how much of it you understood. So in Booleans, Boolean is actually coming from algebraic uh, equations, and whenever it comes to identifying objects where words can be translated as objects, um, they are easy to control and to work with when we declare them um, by giving them a value of some sort. Um, and then the only way that we control it or give it a logic is by using Boolean operators. Okay. So, to know what Boolean is and where it's coming from, it's not as important. Most important is how we're going to use it for textual words, where each word is declared or given a value that can be interpreted, worked against, with, or manipulated by using on a more controlled way, moving those or working with those wordings or with those objects using these operators. We've got three operators. One we call A and D, the other one is OR, and the third one is not. So not a whole lot of operators available. There's just three of them, which we call Boolean operators. And then there are Boolean notations like quotation marks. Certain symbols are there also. But like I said, we're going to look at them from the algebraic equation perspective and try to make sense out of it. And we definitely remember basic algebra from our school days. So it's nothing complicated, something that you already know of. Let's start with A and D. Now, before I do that, there is a video which I'd like to share with you. So, and I think it explains a lot better from what I have here. So let me pull that video. Mm, I guess. Mm, to our short presentation. Wonder if you have this link. This is where we have our videos. Advanced date range booleans. Yeah.
The world's number one syrup, the new extraordinary oil syrup with 6 precious oils जो मेरे बाल बनाए.
Hello.
Okay. All right. This is actually the specific video I want to share with everyone. Okay, so let me give you about 5 to 7 minutes to go through this one. If you can run it on your site, you have your own machines open. Run it on your site. Just let me know if it is, playing or not. And if it is, then just go through it. It's only 5 minutes video. So please run it and
My name is David, and I am certified. However,
we are going to talk about A&D operator and how A&D is no longer used as extensively in Google search. Why is that? And what could be the best replacement for A&D? That's what this video is going to tell you. And then I'm going to explain to you further, okay? Okay, so for everyone, can you tell me if it is playing on your site? You can just copy and paste that link somewhere on your browser and see if it is showing you this screen. Kristen, Listy, Randy, Harry, all of you can just give me a nod, let me know if it is playing. If one of you can tell me it's playing, that's good enough.
I can see it on your screen, and I was just making sure I had it right so I can pull it up and watch it again later.
But do you mind if you can just spend like 5, 7 minutes? I'm going to give it a pause and I'm going to return back in 5, 7 minutes. I just want you to go through this one. It will make it easier for me to deliver what I've explained later with the A&D operator. So that is the reason. Okay.
That's fine.
So please, let's just, I'm just going to leave this open. It's not a problem. It's all working on my side, but I'll be returning in a few minutes. Okay, so let's talk about the video. If it makes sense and you saw what the end does and how end is being replaced by the quotation marks. Um, so what is your feedback? Anyone?
For me, the video was very straightforward and very easy to follow, and it was a really easy way to start with the what the and does, what the or does, and then why when you use not was also helpful.
Excellent. So you got the basic concept, and I couldn't have explained it better. So I guess I thought video would help. Now we will just continue with the same thing about A and D and make it easy to understand for everyone. Thank you for the feedback. Now, with the A and D operator, what it does, and this is basics ABC of booleans. Um, I mean, everybody's using these kind of slides with Venn diagrams and all that. But still, I have to run this slide, so I will just tell you what A and D does. A and D is acting as a connector or a conjoiner between two terms that fall on either side of it. So that adds the two terms or two keywords. Then we've got OR, which is responsible for expanding or giving you option to find either or both terms on the left side and the right side of where the or is placed. Then not is a minus sign. Now, minus sign, I'm sure in the video they explained it very quickly. The minus sign is what really works in Google. NOT, unfortunately, for some reason, they're not entertaining it. So you don't use NOT the same way you would use A and D or um, use it as a word. So NOT as a word in Google search particularly is irrelevant or is redundant. It's not going to be useful. However, when you place a minus sign to eliminate a term, it has to follow certain rules. So let me just, well, let's start with the add sign or with the A and D first, and then we'll talk about the minus sign. So we can go sequentially with it. The slide that is to follow is talking about a relationship between two terms on either side of A and D. So what the concept says that there has to be a relationship or something that needs to build a relationship, which means that contextually, context is what we are looking for, or relationship is the same thing. So what it does is that it just tells you that the x of y, that's one relationship it creates, the impact of x on y, x similar to y, or x inside of y. Uh, Not something that is going to be part of your exam. It's just one of the slides. Let's look at the real way in which we can apply the plus sign. Now, as I explained to you before, that anything that is left with gaps between words is assumed to have a plus sign, which means that the search is, and by the way, plus sign and A and D works the same, except that A and D is not exact replacement of plus, because A and D pushes or forces something to be combined together, whereas a plus sign or an assumed plus is not mandatory or is not enforced. So just leaving a gap is assumed a plus sign. That's what the first statement is saying with the example A. Okay. And then in example B, you're going to replace plus sign with A and D. So if you put A and D in between the three terms, it is going to ensure that all three terms are attached or a part of your return results. Um, it does not mean that it is going to be sequentially the same, which means A&D research and A&D specialist is not the same as using three of these as a single search phrase. What it is saying is to find either to find all three words, no matter how they are arranged or how they are phrased together or in combination in your search results. So it is more the same as putting the word internet in quotes and research and specialists in quotes separately. What I'm trying to imply here, one thing that for sure that you have to understand that A&D works. So it is not retired, or it is not something that you don't use or you're not allowed to use. But preference would be, or a best replacement could be the quotation marks. That's where I'm going to get to. So in the B, okay, so B moving again in C as a search term using A and D, you are basically creating a scenario or situation which is similar to the one that I'm pointing to right here, where internet research and specialists, if individually placed within quotes, are going to act the same as you would with using A and D. So this is a classic way of explaining how A and D can be replaced by quotation marks. Because and it is logically, it makes sense, because, here A and D is making sure all of these are present, and the quotation mark is also enforcing all three words. So best choice, or a lot of times I would use the quotation marks instead of using the A and D. Okay, so if we use the quotation marks on individual terms, we are not saying that it is equal to internet research specialists together placed inside of the quotation marks. So it is not equal to, is what it's saying. Okay. In E, internet research it's also not the same as internet A&D research A&D used here, because in this one the same action is happening as it would in D with these three within quotation marks. So it's not the same as putting all three of them in a single search phrase, which has to be matched exactly. Right. So we can safely replace A and D with using quotation enclosed individual keywords. Assuming in this example, you're using two search terms, lexical semantics and textual semantics. And if you don't put both within quotation marks, some of the things that would happen, which you would observe in your search results, is that it would start to match. Okay, so I'm sorry, so I didn't start quite correctly. So if in the document that is found, there is a word contextual, and it is part of the word, not the entire word, it is also going to be matching a part of it as if it is a separate word, or it is a match to textual. You could see that this is highlighted here. So this could be a problem. Okay. Next, what it would do is that whenever you're using any operator, not just A and D, but it is in between the terms that are not quotation enclosed, what the tendency of the operator is to find or match or add the words that are in its closest vicinity, or it's going to look for the combination of words that are falling on either side of it. Okay, so that would be the first choice. So I want to go a little slow on this so that you can see and you can pretty much understand what it means with the close vicinity. So semantics and lexical would be the first find. Then the behavior changes and it starts to become more erratic and more sporadic with combining these words together. So the first would be lexical semantics, which means that it can move left and right, and it can be not, first of all, don't consider it as a sequence that would include semantics to be followed with the word lexical as if it is reading it from left to right. The search engine is not actually programmed to look at the words as if it is written or it is placed as left to right or the way we write it. We obviously will have to, be more proactive to understand that this would be the behavior, so it can be switched. Semantics and lexical can become lexical semantics, textual semantics, text semantics. Just the word textual would be found, the word lexical as part of it, part of the content page would start to get highlighted. Not necessary all of these combinations will be brought back to you in when you look at the snippets. So that's a behavior that is less controlled. On the other hand, if we put these two within quotes, we are now looking at two search terms. It's easy for A and D to operate. So we wrote textual semantics and lexical semantics within quotation marks. Now, what would happen or what could be a replacement of A and D is using the quotations and just not using A and D at all, right? Because there is no reason for you to use A and D here, assuming that both the terms are inside of the quotation marks, so they definitely have to be found in your search results, meaning that they are now enforced, they're now mandatory, and therefore A and D is not as relevant. So the results you got is somewhat similar. Small variation of numbers of results that you get is not the criteria for you to worry about, as if these are two different ways in which it is responding. Who knows what the algorithms are doing, but most importantly, a slight variation means that you know you could safely replace A and D with putting or removing it, not replacing, but removing the A and D altogether and using these two within quotes. So 548 versus 560, not a huge difference. Remember, we as an association, we are basically are mostly testing these out. We're looking at the outcomes and results to reverse engineer it and to look back and see the behavior or learn from the behavior of search engine to come up with some conclusions or assumptions. That's the best we can do. Google hasn't written a book exactly of what they use and how they work it, but we have our ways of figuring it out. So that's what is coming back to us as our analysis or result of our analysis, which is constant process we keep doing here. So we got these two terms that are definitely going to be found in your search results. However, let me give you an idea where we can use A and D, or where the quotation marks may be the solution, but there could be an added advantage of using A and Ds in a query, and the reason why we would use it. Okay. So I mean, this is outside of of what we are doing right now, but I just occurred that it may be a good time for me to give you another concept of using A and D. While we don't use A and D as often, but there are occasions when we end up using it because we have to. Now I have to create something for you. Like it's not scripted. So let's suppose now this is a slightly longer query. Now supposing I have these two terms, which is now becoming mandatory for the search to find. Okay. But at the same time, I want it to go a step further and to make a relationship or make a choice between using a few words that I'm leaving open. Let's make it like this. Now, what will happen is that with this scenario, I'm just putting parentheses for explaining. You don't put Google does not understand parentheses and it is not recommended, but I'm just explaining it just for the sake of building a relationship or giving you an idea of what might be happening. So what happens is that this becomes, a mandatory find, and I use and to make it go a step further and look for options between intelligence and learning. Okay. And on the other hand, if I don't use A and D, what might be the outcome is that lexical semantic might connect with intelligence because it is right next to it. And this could be one impact. Or there could be textual semantic connecting with intelligence or connecting with learning. Okay. And it would suppress the or it would not override it, but basically create a chaos with the OR working along with these two, whereas these ones are not separated because there is no A and D in between, or it is not separating this part, which is probably this, to have to be resolved first. Okay. So just, at times we do use A and D to separate the behavior of another process or another operator to work together for it to prevent or to prevent it from connecting with other sort of words with whatever is actually left on the left or whatever is on the left hand side or whatever is on either side. Could be some words that you are putting or you're writing your query this way, supposing it would still have the same impact. So to separate it, I could probably do it like this, just so that it becomes kind of literally two different functions, but you're executing separately by differentiation of using A and D as a barrier or as a separator. So that's what we'll do in the advanced search queries. Uh, Not the best time for me to explain it right now because might just come across as more complicated. But I thought, I'll just mention it sort of. Okay. Now, what's next for us? This example was actually explained in that video you saw. Exactly this one. Okay. So I'm going to again explain it the same way, except that I might just add more material to it. So what does OR supposed to do? It's like the concept which is not as clear, or it is perhaps a definition that is not complete or is not clear enough. Um, when I say definition is like what you keep reading online and you learn from, whatever is written. It's not explained exactly is the way it's supposed to be acting. OR is generally considered a choice, an expander, or something that sort of allows you to compare and select, or for the search to compare and select whatever values are placed on either side of. That's not exactly what it is doing. Effectively, it is working both as A and D and as OR together in combination. And I'll show you how. So first, let's just look at the definition. It says the OR is technically interpreted as at least one search term is required, which is what we know of. More than one or all can be returned. So if there are multiple ORs, so more than one can be returned. If you look at the last segment of the definition, it says all can be returned. So even though it's a choice, it doesn't mean that it has to be selective enough or to be narrowing it enough to only include from the a la carte choice it's given by placing it, in multiple times in a row in a query. Rather, it has the ability to look for or find all of those terms. So, what is exactly the default action of the search engine when you're using OR? The first default action of it is that it is going to attempt to find both the terms. As an example, this word pie or pudding means for the search to first attempt to find both the terms if it can. If not, then, and here it says find both. In the second instance, it's going to look for either one of them, right? So if it is going to find both the terms, isn't it the same as putting an A and D in between, or asking the search to find both of them, where you can even put each of these words within quotation marks? That's what it means, right? When you are getting all the terms found in the results. So ideally, what it's doing, or effectively it is doing, is it is acting as both as an A and D and OR, whereas A and D has a precedence over OR. A and D is primarily something that it is going to attempt to do first, and then it's going to default to OR. So that's what you need to understand. And there is no harm in it. I mean, what does it matter to you if you're writing a query? If it finds both, fine. If not, fine. But from the definition and from its function, you have to be aware of it. You can use a vertical bar instead of using OR, and this is not a rule I'm speaking about. It is just my experience and something that I feel comfortable using. I would prefer, instead of using the word OR, I would prefer just putting a symbol or a notation like the vertical bar instead of OR. somehow I find that it is more effective, and I don't have a theory for it. It's probably my personal experience, and I'm just sharing it with you. If you can rather use vertical, notations like vertical bar, or in the case of, I guess in the A and D, you have to use it as there's no choice. You can't use a plus sign. So basically, OR is what I'm emphasizing. To replace OR with a vertical bar, it works better. From the relationship perspective, this part, not sure, but I've seen it only once in the exam, where they give you a relationship and ask you, okay, what does it denote, or what is it that it is expressing? um, from the Boolean's perspective, what sign or what operator it's talking about. So they might write the X and or Y, or the X and or Y, the impact of X with Y, X similar to Y, or X within Y. That's something that might just come. Otherwise, it's not as important, and it's not for you to learn much about. Anyway, it's mentioned, and this is how they've expressed it, and that's how we are going to um, learn from it. One of the concepts which is most important for me is the similarity of X with Y. In the case of using OR, the best rule is that the choices that you give for the search to find one term against the other or alongside another term is that it should have some relationship or some rationale or some similarity. I mean, you want to use apples with apples, but maybe different kind or different label of apple, but it has to be apple. Okay. Um, that's a presumption, or that is the crux of, or the reason why we use OR, because we can do with either terms or both are acceptable, right? So that you have to maintain. Um, hmm, okay. This is, I guess, the algebraic version of how how we put the equation using the, or turn something into an algebraic expression from using the booleans. So if we have how to and we put A and D here, and assuming that draw or paint could be two variables, either of these can be found. You are basically assuming that whatever is closest or next to the OR on either side can comfortably be considered as part of the resolving equation inside of parentheses. And what happens in algebra, if you recall, that whatever is to be resolved inside of parentheses comes first or has a precedence over what is outside of the parentheses. Okay. So the first action would be to resolve whatever is, shown here as two terms to work together or work against or with each other inside of the parenthesis, and then whatever the result is, or if the term draw is more popular, or paint is more popular, it is going to prevail. And if how to is a generic term, or it can apply to both draw and paint, the one that is being picked is first resolved as the most popular term, and then it will get connected from whatever is outside, that is how to. Now we don't have to use A and D here, because A and D is going to work the same as if you have how to in quotes as an enforcer. So you don't necessarily have to do that. You can simply write how to and then put draw or paint here. So when you don't need to put A and D, don't use it, because that might not give you as good of a result. First thing, it's recommended by Google, and it is also a part of the experience. If not required, don't put additional terms or don't confuse it when one of the expressions of putting it within quotes is sufficient enough. Okay, so what would be the results? It's, if draw is more popular, it's going to show how to draw. And the second would be how to paint. Now, A and D here is not supposed to be the expression A and D, could be just the word A and D, okay? So it might be this or this or this or this. So both results may show up. How to draw will show up with more frequency, perhaps in the first three results, perhaps down more, or in combination, draw and paint would be coming with how to, or then, paint might have least sort of popularity, and so it will appear in the deeper or the lower ranked results. Here is another way of expressing how OR and A and D work together. So, okay. First of all, in this illustration, you could see that London or Sofia, as I told you, wherever you're using or is actually supposed to be resolved first before anything outside of it is connected with it. So London or Sofia plus vacation. Okay, so A and D plus is not literally, you don't have to put plus or use parentheses. It's just giving you an idea that A and D is there. The reason why this illustration is set is to let you know that whatever gets connected or whatever is supposed to be in the closest vicinity of these operators, may it be A and D or OR, it is going to connect with whatever is to be resolved as being closest. So Sofia or London, these two will be resolved and then added to vacation. I guess this is just a repeat of what we did before. But vacation is something that I've put within the quotation marks to replace A and D, London or Sofia. I think it's just a repeat of previous example, not required. Here are different ways in which we have used OR, but used symbolic vertical sign. Different scenarios, example 1 through 7, to show you what the outcome might be or what the reaction would be. In the first example, what is going to happen is that how to is mandatory. It's definitely have to be part of the return results. The fact that it has to connect with the word draw or the word paint, or it can also bring both results in the same snippet. It could be how to draw and how to paint as the first instance or first preference to contain or to maintain presence of all the words. However, how to is considered more, it's mandatory. Primal paleo recipe. Here we've got two words here, whereas primal and primal is, ancient. Paleo is the name of the recipe. I don't know why you've used this example, but whatever it is. So primal and paleo and recipes. First instance is to make sure that all the words are present. Second is that primal will connect with paleo, or primal paleo would show up, or primal recipe would show up, or just paleo recipes would show up, or the word recipe might be dropped altogether. In the third instance, if you've got two, then either of these can work fine. And the fourth one, it has got four words on the left hand side and one on the right. So again, the rule sausage and biscuit, this needs to be resolved first, but the attempt of the search would be to combine gravy and sausage with biscuit, as if gravy and sausage is more famous or more popular together. So it would be gravy, sausage, and biscuit, and it would just not entertain the word recipe, or recipe can combine with sausage, or recipe can combine with biscuit. So this is something that you have to avoid to contain the chaos or the erratic behavior of search. You also are looking at more examples. I'm just moving it quickly. Okay, so it is just giving you, this is the one that is showing the arrow is giving you the different combinations. So this, assuming this is the terms we have used, come on. Okay, in example 4, these could be the outcomes. First is recipes, gravy, sausage would be combined together, or biscuits be a choice. And because the OR is actually coming right before the word biscuit, so these three can combine with the word biscuit, or all of these are present. Or and sausage means that both these can be combined, or gravy and sausage can be combined. And then there are these combinations. This is actually given to you as an assignment, and I'm not giving you the assignment, just explaining it quickly. So that's the reason I'm going through these basics. Basically, it's just beating the same drum, but this is for your practice and for your review. So I just want to move out of this and to go to the next one. Mm, but please do refer to these slides if you want to practice something, or you want to see, how they are combined. Um, okay, so what happens if more than two terms are used? Let's suppose you've got three terms here. What's going to happen? It's going to look for either of these three terms, but how will it make a choice, or what terms you expect would have a higher frequency of being found? Or why would you use three variations of these when you know that some of these, or one of them, would have a priority over another, but still you would use OR, right? I guess when you have a search, that would suffice, or return result would suffice, if you can do with any of these three words, should be good enough. But when you have more than two terms on either side of it, or you have added term that brings an additional OR instance to work with the query, you are basically not sure which would show up. Even though you want cloning ethics to have a more significance to your research, you can still do with human clone, but your priority would be cloning ethics. Your least priority would be, say, cloning humans. So how is it going to work? I guess one of the reasons, or one of the ways in which I would use additional terms is look at the results and see how search engine is bringing these combinations, or any of these terms with higher frequency, so that I know that this is better term or more research term. That's when I would just use it in multiple instances. Otherwise, I would use, let's say, if I have to just find um, cloning ethics as most priority, and the second priority is human clone, I would not use cloning humans. I would just do human clone or cloning ethics in one instance, and then in the second instance I would probably use the second priority human clone with the third priority, which was, or the least priority of cloning humans, just so that I can separate those searches into segments, and then work my way through that strategy. So using it multiple times, there is slight, kind of process involved, and perhaps you want to segment it or run it, in combination. Usually, what it's saying is, whenever you're using or, the variables are sufficient, Okay, another thing about using OR, you know that the search engine does not allow the parenthesis to compare two groups. And this is what I'm going to explain is what it could be the best way to run multiple use the OR with multiple search terms. So in example one, you could see that we have used internet and online as an option against the term market research, whereas market research and market study could be another sort of choice, and then market demand is another choice. Even though the query is correct, but there is a grouping issue, and I'll show you what grouping means. Let's suppose this is the query, and I want to refine it further. Here, there are four terms, literally 1, 2, 3, and 4. Basically. Online and marketing together, marketing study is one, marketing demand is one, and internet is another. So four terms are used. I now want to group it and separate it. So supposing internet and online is one set that I want to get resolved, and then I've used A and D purposefully to separate market research and then to segment it as a second group to compare with the first group of internet and online, and separate market research, market study, and market demand as a second group. So to create that group or to separate that group so that the word market research does not attach with online, okay, as we did in the first one, I would use A and D. Now I have actually I've broken it into two sets, which will get resolved individually or against each other in two separate groups. In the fifth one, this is what this is another way of me separating the two groups. And how I've done that is that I have put the word online within quotation marks. When I put this in quotation marks and I separate another quotation marks here, basically I am replacing the A and D. See, A and D is now being replaced by quotation marks. When we put A and D here, the O online may connect with or combine with market research. So here A and D may not be as appropriate because again, market research may combine with online, or online market research may combine with the word internet. So this is one problem that I'm facing. So what can I do so that it is not going to, the word online is not going to attach with market research? I'm going to put this within quotation marks so that it becomes a separate word that has its own value on its own without having the enforcement of A and D to make it combine with the word market research. Okay. On the other hand, it would not impact the relationship or the execution of ORD between internet and online. And then example 4 is another variation. Okay. It is perhaps the same as in example 1. Yeah, it's the same as in example 1. I don't know why it's part of it, but just be focused on 2 and 3. See, this part you would want to apply when you are actually running the search queries. If you're not getting results, or if you're getting the word online getting connected with market research, as in the first example, that's where the problem is. And you still feel that this needs to be grouped. Rather, what you would have visualized is to have parentheses put or put internet and online inside of parentheses as one group and then separate it by putting another parenthesis from where the first word market research in the second segment starts and where it ends for parenthesis closed. But because parentheses are not available or they're not executable, this is the best thing we can do as shown in example 3. Okay, so let's just, I'm sorry, I again took more time than you're supposed to be sitting here with me, and perhaps you have better things to do. So let's just conclude this lecture today. We'll have the recording available tomorrow sometime. You have to go through it. You can actually access it, I guess, before noontime or perhaps before 3 p.m. our Eastern Standard Time. We do get the editing done and get the recording uploaded. So any questions? If you have anything that you need to ask, please do so. And if not, then I'll see you day after. Day after tomorrow, we're going to run search queries based on what we've learned so far. An additional thing that we would like to cover is the last segment of the minus sign. It won't take us too long. We'll spend 15-20 minutes of our first segment to complete that. Then we will have bunch of queries we can run using Boolean operators. Unless you have something of your own that you want to bring to the class, we can probably work with that too. And if we have time, so that we can share it. The idea is try to make it more interactive next time. So see you day after, and have a nice evening, a great day, or off. I don't know if it's evening yet for you. So bye bye. I'll see you day after. Thank you again for attending the class.